We need to talk about Jaron Boots Ennis. On paper, he is the future of boxing. In the ring, he looks untouchable. But outside the ring, ducking smoke like it's part of the game plan. From Virgil Ortiz to Teofimo Lopez to Brian Norman Jr. Big names, big fights, and no action. He keeps saying, anybody at 54, anybody with a name. But when the names show up, suddenly nobody knows anything. So today on High Guard TV, we're breaking it all down. The resume, the callouts, the ducking, and the real question. Is Boots Ennis ready to be great? Or just another what if? But before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't, and share it with all your friends and best friends. Now, with that being said, let's get into the video. Mr. High Heels, Mr. Stilettos, the man, the myth, the duck, Jaron Boots Ennis. Listen, I've got nothing but respect for Boots' skills. He passes the eyeball test, no doubt. Fast hands, slick movements, power for days. I used to say he's like Roy Jones Jr. in the 90s. But lately, the conversation around him has gotten real messy. Why? Because he and his team just don't seem interested in fighting high-level competition. We're talking
anybody at 154, anybody with a name.
But when the names come calling, he's nowhere to be found. Let's break this down. So let's look at Boots' last 5 fights. We have Mr. Emanthis Stanionis, we have Karen twice, we have David Amanasian, and we have Roy Monvia. Now look, no disrespect to any of these fighters, but nobody here screams world beater. These aren't fights that build a legacy. If you squint hard enough, you'll start to wonder, who's the toughest guy on this resume? And that question leads us to the one that got away, Mr. Virgil Ortiz. Now, let's take it back to a time when Boots and Virgil Ortiz were both coming up at 147. That fight should have happened. It felt like destiny. But back then, promoters were still trying to build up fights like it was the early 2000s, with Floyd and Manny Pacquiao and stuff like that. So fast forward, Virgil moves up to 154 because he can't make weight anymore. But not before fighting the likes of Hooker, Mickinson, and Mean Machine. That's some real resistance considering what he was going through with his health. Now, after Boots' second snooze fest with Karen, the man goes on record saying,
anybody at 154, anybody with a name.
So Virgil says, bet, let's do it. Turkey is like, I got money. And Boots wants to fight at 147. Bro, you just said
anybody at 154, anybody with a name.
Like seriously, guy, like what the hell? Then Boots drops a statement saying he didn't know anything about the fight talks and that any info about his career comes from him directly. Okay, we see that, we hear that, we understand it. But let's go back a little further to the Brian Norman Jr. fight, which was a fight for the culture. You see, this one hurt me personally. You got Brian Norman Jr. coming off his savage KO win against Santian, a guy who was supposed to be the next big thing at a 147 pounds. Brian said nah G and folded him in the 10th round and dropped this cold ass Selly. So now we've got 2 undefeated knockout artists in their 20s fighting for all the belts at 147. This could have been a throwback fight, one for the culture. Like, if you think about it, this fight could have been the Tommy Hearns versus Sugar Ray Leonard back in the day type fight. Twitter was lit, fans were hyped as hell. So what happened? What really happened? Boots' dad and Norman Sr. actually agree on the fight. But of course, they can't agree on the timing. Norman wants it in October, Boots' team wants it later. Then Eddie slides in like, cool, here's $750,000. Norman's team's like, all we're asking for is $2 million. Just enough to pay promoters' fee since we're crossing the street because, Brian Norman Jr.'s team is on Top Rank and Boots is on, you get the point. Negotiations go back and forth. Then boom, Boots' team pulls out entirely. And just like before, Boots says, I don't know anything about it. Again, How are you the champion and don't know what's going on with your own career? Which now brings us to the Teofimo Lopez fiasco. Now this one has the whole internet fuming, just like I am right now. Teo beats Barboza and immediately calls out Boots. You've got the linear 140 champ calling out the 147 champ. And surprisingly, even Turkey and Eddie Hearn were down to make it happen. For once, everyone was on the same page because everybody doesn't like Teofimo Lopez and Boots is like, the champion for the culture. Like, if he beats Teo, that does wonders for his career. That shoots him into the stratosphere, into the superstardom stratosphere, and he becomes a household name. But what happens? What happens with Mr. Jaron Ennis? Mr.
Anybody at 154, anybody with a name.
Boots turns it down again. And now we don't even know what weight Boots is fighting at. We don't know who he's fighting. And we still don't have a single high quality win on his resume. Look, I'm just going to end this by saying nobody is denying the talent. Boots is clearly special. But talent only gets you so far. You need quality opponents. You need names. You need tests. So here's the bottom line, Mr. Jaron Stilettos Ennis. Pick a struggle. Are you unified 147 champion? Or is it still
Anybody at 154, anybody with a name.
You can't keep ducking and dodging, then dropping statements like you're not in charge of your own career. You're not a prospect anymore. It's time to act like a champion and do better.